Feline Therapy by Lycan Wingbat, a Batman All Media Types fanfic, rated for general audiences, with additional tags for Enemy to Caretaker, Jason Todd as Red Hood, Tim Drake as Robin, Cat Tim Drake, Jason Todd has chronic pain, Jason Todd has PTSD, Jason Todd has a heart, platonic cuddling, deep pressure therapy, Tim basically acts like a weighted blanket, cuddling and snuggling, Tim Drake is Kit Kat. Part 1 of That Time Tim Got Stuck as a Cat. Summary. Jason finds a friend in a cat. Or, Tim gets turned into a cat, and his only hope of surviving the night is the Red Hood. The only thing is that the Red Hood thinks he's a normal cat, and Tim isn't going to be able to correct that assumption anytime soon. It had been a normal patrol. A quiet one, even. Red Hood hadn't shown up, attempting to break Tim's bones, and crime was hiding from the incoming storm. But then, alien tech turned Tim into a cat, ruining a perfectly good patrol. Now, he was crammed in a cage, somewhere in the middle of Gotham, and the worst part? Batman had no idea that he was a cat. Jason was making his way back to his apartment when he heard it. He had been trying to get back before it started raining. Gotham was in for some of the worst storms of the year. The forecast predicted rain would turn into snow, so Gotham would be starting its winter with a blizzard, and anything that wasn't strictly necessary would be closed. A meow sounded through the alley next to him. Jason was going to ignore it, but another, more distressed meow reached his ears, and before he knew what he was doing, he was in front of a cage. It was in the middle of the alley, discarded. There was a brown Maine Coon inside, with light brown stripes that reminded Jason of a Kit Kat. The cage was too small for a Maine Coon, so whoever put him there probably wasn't expecting such a big cat. Jason assumed it was a he, had a collar that was obviously too tight, interrupting his breathing. "Hey, kitty," Jason called as he crouched down. The cat pressed himself to the back of the cage, hissing. The poor thing was probably scared out of his mind. "Shh, it's okay. I'm here to help." Jason unlocked the cage, offering his hand to the cat, who let out a distressed meow, cowering away. "I just want to get you somewhere safe and that collar off of you." Jason swore that the cat was looking at him with skepticism. "I'm here to help." Thunder rumbled above them. The cat's ears flicked forward, but he stayed still. Jason reached into the cage, keeping his movements slow. The cat had probably decided to trust Jason, because he stayed still as Jason did his best to remove the collar without hurting him. "There we go. That must feel great, huh?" The cat shook his head, fluffing up his long fur. With the collar off, Jason was at a loss for what to do next. Gotham's animal shelter wasn't exactly close enough, and with the storm approaching, Jason didn't really know of any alternatives. Then it started to rain. Great. Jason sighed. "Sorry about this, Kit Kat." There was a questioning "merp" that turned into a distressed yowl, and hissing as soon as Jason picked Kit Kat up. His name is Kit Kat now. Jason's lower back ached from Kit Kat's weight, and Jason didn't blame it. Kit Kat was massive. I know, shh," Jason soothed, bringing Kit Kat to his chest and zipping his leather jacket up so that only Kit Kat's head and tail poked out, and started speed-walking to his safe house. Kit Kat squirmed a bit, but seemed to calm down after walking for a minute or so. "See, that wasn't so bad." Kit Kat looked like he would disagree with Jason if he could. Jason's body protested, mostly his knees, but kept his speed as he went up the stairs, only slowing down to disarm the traps around the door as fast as his trembling fingers let him. While it wasn't ideal to go into his apartment in full Red Hood gear, he couldn't climb up the fire escape right now. Not with Kit Kat in his jacket, or his unreliable fingers. Jason removed his helmet and ran a hand through sweaty helmet hair. "Okay, first things first. You need a bath." If Kit Kat could speak, and if words could kill, Jason was certain that he'd be 6 feet under again. As it turns out, Kit Kat didn't need to speak to try and send Jason back to his grave. And the only reason why Kit Kat had not succeeded was because Jason had been lazy and kept his armor on. Jason would also not have to get a litter box, because apparently Kit Kat knew how to use the toilet. Kit Kat had waited until Jason had left the bathroom, closed the door, and had even flushed afterwards. Jason was still trying to decide if he was impressed or freaked out. After the toilet fiasco, Jason took a hot shower and flopped onto the couch with a hot pack to ease the aches and pains brought on by the storm. He should get something to eat, but it would have to wait until morning. Kit Kat wandered back after he examined Jason's apartment. But Jason barely noticed, too busy trying not to drown in the memories the rain brought. A curious chirp cut through the haze, and Jason was dumped back into reality. "Are you still mad at me?" His voice wavered. Jason didn't know why he cared what a cat thought of him. But he kept staring at Kit Kat like he held all the answers, which was ridiculous. Kit Kat placed his large front paws on the sofa and headbutted Jason's arm. And Jason definitely didn't cry at the affectionate gesture. Kit Kat looked at him for a moment before jumping onto him. Jason let out a cut-off "ow" while Kit Kat made himself comfortable on Jason's torso and stuck his wet nose in Jason's neck. His loud purring filled the room, keeping Jason anchored in reality, driving away any memories that the rain had tried to drown him in. Jason couldn't stop the tears from escaping. He couldn't remember the last time a living being felt this safe, or the last time he felt this safe, for that matter. He wrapped his arms around Kit Kat and kissed his forehead. "Thank you." Kit Kat started purring even louder, to the point that Jason could feel it in his chest. "I'll take good care of you," Jason vowed. Kit Kat would be the happiest cat in Gotham as long as Jason had a say in it. Jason felt sleep slowly creep up on him, pulling him into a warm embrace, and for the first time in a long while, he felt safe enough to fall into it. So, with Kit Kat still purring on top of him, Jason fell into a dreamless sleep and slept through the night. Snowed In by Lichen Wingbat, a Batman All Media Types fanfic, rated for teen and up audiences, with additional tags for hurt comfort, cuddling and snuggling, sleepy cuddles, anxiety attacks, self-worth issues, Tim Drake is Kit Kat, and Jason still doesn't know. Rated T because one sentence has implied/reference to rape non-con. Cats can eat a lot of weird stuff. Jason Todd has issues. Good sibling Jason Todd. He just doesn't know it yet. Summary: Jason and Kit Kat's second day living together. Jason woke up slowly. His chest was warm, but his toes felt like they were going to freeze off. And yet he had slept better than he had in years, so he wasn't going to complain. He blearily opened his eyes and was met with a ball of brown right in front of his face. He also noticed that in the night, the pouring rain had turned into snow, and Jason wondered if it would turn back into rain in the morning. It took him a while to figure out what the brown was, but when it moved, spreading out on Jason's chest, revealing 2 fluffy ears, it clicked. Kit Kat, the Maine Coon he'd rescued, was using his chest as a pillow. Not that Jason minded. Kit Kat made a nice weighted blanket. When Jason reached out to smooth the hair between Kit Kat's ears, the cat shrilled in surprise and lifted his fluffy head, looking very confused, like he had no idea where he was. "Sorry, bud," Jason whispered, his sore voice not letting him speak any louder. "I thought you were awake." Kit Kat seemed to accept his apology, blinking slowly at him before sitting up on Jason's chest, which was not comfortable in the least. His paw dug into Jason's ribs and abdomen, and his still freezing toes protested in kind. Jason looked at Kit Kat mournfully. He didn't want to chase the warm cat away, but it didn't look like he had a choice. Carefully nudging Kit Kat off his chest and onto the couch, Jason winced at the cat's displeased meow, guilt settling in his gut. "I know, Kit Kat, I'm sorry, but my toes might fall off if I don't get a blanket." Kit Kat's unimpressed look told him that Kit Kat didn't care if Jason's foot fell off, as long as he had a body to lie on. There was, thankfully, a blanket on the arm of the couch, so Jason didn't have to go far. But he had a feeling Kit Kat wouldn't be forgiving him anytime soon, unless Jason found a way to bribe him. How do you even bribe a cat? With a flick of his wrist, Jason unfolded the fuzzy yellow blanket. He pulled it over himself, careful not to cover Kit Kat, and after he'd made himself comfortable, He lifted the edge of the blanket and pulled Kit Kat against his side. Kit Kat started to protest, still upset with Jason, but was quickly won over by the prospect of the heat that the blanket and Jason would bring. He snorted as Kit Kat burrowed into his side and deeper into the blanket. "Good night to you, too, Mr. Moody." Jason could have sworn that Kit Kat made a disgruntled huff, but sleep dragged him into its clutches before he could think too hard about it. Jason awoke, free of the nightmares that usually haunted him, with Kit Kat snuggled underneath the blanket, with most of his body sprawled on Jason's chest. The cat had probably moved sometime in the night. Kit Kat's warmth seeped into him, chasing away the aches and pains that liked to plague Jason. Despite Kit Kat's weight, Jason's chest felt light, like he was breathing fresh mountain air instead of Gotham's smog. Usually, he'd feel the choking need to do something, even if the streets were empty. But now, he felt like he could lie on this couch the whole day. He breathed a deep sigh, a strange peace falling over him as he stared at the shape of Kit Kat's body covered in the blanket. Moving carefully so he wouldn't wake the sleeping beauty, Jason gently lifted the blanket up to take a peek. He had planned to give Kit Kat to a shelter when the storm had passed. But now, looking at the contentment on the furry little face, Jason knew nothing could convince him to give Kit Kat up. Jason stared at the inside of his fridge. What the hell was he going to feed Kit Kat? It wasn't like he kept a supply of cat food, and Jason didn't have any fish, so that was also off the table. And the snow hadn't let up even once, so even if he could go out, nothing would be open. Frustration welled up inside of Jason. He couldn't even take care of a cat. How pathetic was he that he couldn't even look after an animal? A wave of self-loathing washed over him, taking over the frustration. Jason was cleaning up Crime Alley. Even if it felt like with every step he took forward, he ended up 5 steps backwards. He was the Red Hood, for crying out loud. Criminals shook at his name, so why couldn't he feed the cat that he had rescued, that had chased away the terrors that had been inhabiting his dreams for years? Jason sank to the floor, his back against the small island. A gaping black hole sat in his chest, sucking in any warmth he had gained through the night, threatening to swallow Jason whole. He pulled his legs up to his chest, wrapped his arms around them, and buried his face in his knees. As he sat there on the floor, Jason wondered why he even tried anymore. What good was he actually doing? When he was Robin, it had been easier. Save the day, comfort the victim, or at least, it felt like it had been easier. It felt like nothing he did as Red Hood made an impact. Yes, the average thug was terrified of Red Hood, but those who were scared of him weren't the ones that needed to be scared. Human traffickers still came to Gotham, to Crime Alley. Drugs made their way into the hands of minors. Rape was still a problem. Red Hood could kill rapists, but that wouldn't take away any of the trauma that had come from it. No matter what he did, he kept failing. He couldn't help but think of everything he did wrong. Titan's Tower came to mind all too quickly. He had attacked a kid. He'd been angry with Bruce and had taken it out on a kid. Jason pulled at his hair. No one would miss him, would they? If he died tonight, no one would notice. No one had missed him the first time he died, and after he came back, he had burnt every bridge he hadn't already destroyed in his first life. Something bumped his leg, startling Jason out of the hopeless cycle his mind had trapped him in. He lifted his face away from his knees as Kit Kat pushed his body in the gap between Jason's arm and leg. With his front paw on Jason's abdomen, he lifted his head to look at Jason in the eye. Kit Kat's blue eyes seemed to stare into Jason's soul, at everything Jason wanted to hide. He was reminded how big Kit Kat was. The cat was eye level with him when Jason sat like this. Kit Kat poked at his cheek with his nose, letting out a soft, questioning, "Merp?" Jason laughed wetly at the sensation. His chest felt tight. He didn't deserve Kit Kat. Not even a little. Tears started to run down his face. Jason aggressively wiped them away. But that led to more tears, which turned into sobs. Jason tried to stop crying. Kit Kat was growing more and more distressed with each tear that fell, but he just kept crying. Kit Kat was meowing at him, and tapping Jason's face with a paw. It took a while for him to realize that it was probably because he was hyperventilating. Jason didn't even have a second to think, One moment he was trying to, unsuccessfully, control his breathing, and the next Kit Kat's back paws were on his abs, and his front paws were on Jason's shoulders. His first instinct was to shove the 22-kilogram cat standing on his chest off, but then Kit Kat pressed his head underneath Jason's chin and started purring so loud Jason could feel it in his bones. Something unwound inside of him as Jason wrapped his arms around the warm body on top of him, and the cat settled on him in such a way that he was lying on top of Jason, effectively pinning the man. As he dug his fingers into Kit Kat's fur, he felt the same relief you feel when your head breaks the surface of the water and you can finally breathe again. He was still breathing like a dying man, but he could feel his heart calming. Not by much, but calming nonetheless. They sat like that on the floor of Jason's kitchen until Jason's breathing returned to normal, with only the occasional hiccup and Kit Kat's purring to disturb the calm. He could feel his butt slowly going numb, but Kit Kat seemed content where he was, if the loud purring coming from said cat was anything to go by. Jason pressed a quick kiss to Kit Kat's forehead, causing Kit Kat's purr to stutter, and a startled "merp" to come from the cat. Jason chuckled and moved his hand from where it was buried in Kit Kat's thick brown fur, scratching the soft hair behind his ears instead. "I'm sorry you got stuck with me, bud." Jason wished they had met in a life where he wasn't such a mess of a person. "You deserve better." Jason spoke the words so softly that he almost thought that Kit Kat didn't hear him, but Kit Kat headbutted Jason's jaw and purred even louder, seemingly displeased with his comment. "I'm not a good person, Fluffball." Frustration settled deep in his gut. Not at Kit Kat, but himself. "I've hurt a lot of people. Good people." Drake's frightened, bloody face still haunted Jason in the early hours of the morning, and he felt sick just thinking about how he had left the kid, barely breathing, for Batman to find. "When the storm clears, I'll find someone better for you." Jason wanted to be selfish and keep Kit Kat. To have someone who didn't care what he did or didn't do. To have someone who would love him unconditionally. But what about when the pit reared its ugly head? What about when Jason was drowning in a nightmare and couldn't tell what was and wasn't real? Kit Kat wasn't purring. Jason's head snapped down in panic. Kit Kat stared at him. His loud purrs had quieted to the point where they were almost imperceptible, and his big blue eyes seemed so sad and hurt. Then Kit Kat looked away. He didn't meow or headbutt Jason. He just laid his fluffy head on Jason's collarbone and curled in on himself, dejected. Jason wanted to start crying all over again. Guilt and regret sank their claws into Jason's heart. He had messed up again, like he always did. He wanted to take back every word, but what good would it do? Kit Kat needed someone who could actually take care of him. He didn't need someone like Jason. When Jason finally felt like he wasn't on the verge of another emotional breakdown, he reached up for his phone, carefully so he didn't upset Kit Kat more than he already had, which he had left on the island. He dialed a number he had memorized a long time ago. It rang once, twice. Jason wondered if the storm was interfering with the signal. Was this even her number anymore? Then the call went through. "Hello?" Jason swallowed. He hadn't spoken to her since he'd died. But he had to do this. For Kit Kat. "Selena." Jason heard a sharp breath on the other side of the phone. "Jason?" "Hi, I found a cat before the storm hit, and I don't really know what to do. I don't have any cat food. This was a terrible idea. I'm sorry. I didn't know who else to call." "I'm glad you called." There was an awkward pause. "How's the cat? Do you know if they're a boy or a girl?" Jason stumbled over his answer. "He's okay. I named him Kit Kat." "That's a cute name." Jason could hear the teasing tone in Selena's voice. "I didn't call for you to tease my name choices." Jason grumbled, but there wasn't any heat in his voice. He had missed her. Selena tried, and failed, to hide her laughter. "Sorry. What do you have in your fridge? Don't leave anything out. You'll be surprised at what cats can eat." As it turned out, Jason had a lot of vegetables and fruits he could feed Kit Kat until he got cat food, or found Kit Kat a home where he would be safe. Now Jason had to ask if Selena could take Kit Kat in, or if she knew someone who did. Do you and Handsome need anything else? Selena asked, despite never having seen Kit Kat. Yes. Jason forced his voice to stay even. When the storm passes, can you take Kit Kat in? I don't want to dump him in a shelter. Why don't you take him in? Kit Kat's ears perked up. I can help you. Jason knew the second he opened his mouth, Kit Kat's ears would drop. The certainty and dread sat uncomfortably in his gut. He's not safe with me, Selena. He deserves better. Jason watched as Kit Kat's ears dropped down again. Why wouldn't he be safe with you, Jason? Are you telling me that your apartment isn't one of the most fortified buildings in Gotham? And are you telling me that you wouldn't spoil him rotten? Selena asked skeptically. I'm sure Bats told you about my run-in with the pit. Jason couldn't keep all of the bitterness out of his tone. He did. Then you know I'm not safe to be around. Jason squeezed his eyes shut. He was starting to wish he could just hang up, but Kit Kat needed a safe place. Jason, are you really doing this for Kit Kat, or are you doing this because you are scared of what-ifs that might not even happen? Selena's question cut right to the open wound Jason had been trying to avoid. Of course he was scared. It had been nearly 24 hours since Jason had rescued Kit Kat, and he was already attached. But since Jason came back, the people who tried to get close to him, or he tried to get close to, always got hurt, either physically or emotionally. But Kit Kat wasn't a person. He was a cat. Jason wouldn't push him away if he said the wrong thing. Kit Kat wouldn't be disappointed if Jason didn't act like he did before he had died. He wouldn't place unattainable expectations on Jason. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. Jason? Are you still there? The concern in her voice was almost enough for the tears from earlier to start flowing again. He looked down at Kit Kat to find him staring into Jason's eyes. He could try. For Kit Kat. I'll take care of him, he said as steadily as he could, not turning his eyes away from Kit Kat's, who had immediately started purring again after Jason's declaration, and had started to rub his cheek against Jason's collarbone. Maybe Jason would have to watch what he said, after all, because Kit Kat seemed to understand him, at least a little bit. Even a blind man could see that. I'm glad. Selena sounded just a little fond. Could you check up on us? Make sure I don't hurt him. Jason instinctively expected her to say no, but that was probably his paranoia talking. Of course, Jason. And if you ever need any help with Kit Kat, or any other questions, call me. Her tone was warm and light, and Jason wanted to hold on to it for as long as possible. Thanks, Selena. You're welcome, sweetheart. After they had said their goodbyes, Jason hung up. You're stuck with me now, Fluffball, Jason said, running his fingers through thick fur. The only answer Kit Kat gave was loud purrs. Notes. I love them so much, but sweet primes, it can be hard to write them. I'm still learning how to write the hurt and hurt comfort, so constructive criticism is welcome, but please be kind. Comments are welcome. If you feel like leaving one, even a key smash will make my day. This is my Tumblr, where I occasionally post updates on my fics. Thank you so much for reading. If you enjoyed this story, link to the series is in the description. It's not just a single fic, it's a series, so it'll send you to the series. You can click the first one, and then you can, read along. I know some people do that. If you liked my reading, you can subscribe if you want, and you can leave recommendations in the comments for what I should do next. Yeah. Thank you for listening.